professional development and really, okay.
Yeah.
Because I know I sent it to the wrong email, like there's somehow extra wrong, and then I resent it to you with a separate note.
Okay.
And then I just sent your back, so I
To your role, Marianne.
when did you send it?
Which
I probably resent it to you like.
Which right is that?
This one.
This one.
I can resend it again.
If I could have your attention, we're going to go ahead and get things started. Good afternoon and welcome. My name is Mike Bergman, and I'm director of the Pro Bono Initiative, which is a project of PILI, the Public Interest Law Initiative. Thank you all for joining us today at the Pro Bono Forum. We're holding these twice a year, co-sponsored with the Chicago Bar Foundation. And this year, we are hosting it in conjunction with the CBA-CBF Pro Bono Week. Today is the kickoff to Pro Bono Week, which will go on throughout the week, so a very happy Pro Bono Week to all of you. The intent of the Pro Bono Forum is to bring together a cross-section of pro bono leaders from law firms, corporations, law schools, and legal aid agencies throughout Chicago primarily, but on occasion we're fortunate enough to get folks from outside of Chicago as well throughout the state. I'd like to make a special thanks to the planning team who works on putting together this and all of our other programs and events for the Pro Bono Initiative. Many of them are here today and will be serving also as roundtable discussion facilitators. They are Sarah Bernstein from Barrick, Verrazano, Kirschbaum, and Nagelberg, Vita Dimitrovich from Chicago Legal Clinic, Dana Hill from Safe Arts Shaw, Shay Laughlin from DePaul University College of Law, Michelle Kaplan McAndrew from Zenner Consulting Group, Marianne O'Connor from JP Morgan Chase & Company, Marcy Rolnick from Lawyers for the Creative Arts, Leanne Russo from Jones Day, Richard Sevchek from Bell Boyd & Lloyd, and Tejal Kaparia from Abbott Laboratories. Thanks to each of you for all of your help in planning our programs throughout the year. Each time when we host the forum, we typically have a panel presentation to start out, and that's what we'll begin with today until about 4 o'clock. In a few moments, I'll be introducing our panelists. We'll take about an hour to hear from the panelists, allow some time for you to ask some questions of our panelists. And then from 4 to 5, we will have a roundtable discussion. Each table has a facilitator to help lead the discussion, ensure that everyone participates. Though those of you who have been here before know my usual joke, which Susan Curry will tell you is not much of a joke, that I have control issues. One of the ways they manifest themselves is in that I have assigned you all seating. But I've done this for a reason. What we try to do is to break up those at the tables so that there's a nice mix of people at each table from law firms, law schools, corporations, and agencies. Hopefully you'll take the roundtable discussion time to talk about some of the issues and challenges you're facing, as well as celebrating some of the successes that each of your pro bono programs have encountered over the last year. Following the roundtable discussion from 5 to 6, we'll move across the hall here on the second floor for a reception. I encourage all of you, if your time and schedule allows, to please join us for that. Aside from the good food and beverages that we have for you, it is a great opportunity to get to meet one another and learn more about each other's pro bono programs. And I've heard some great stories in the last couple of weeks as I've talked with some past attendees about great opportunities of meeting and networking and working on partnership projects together because of the reception and time at the Pro Bono Forum. So I do hope each of you will take some time and get to meet one another more. The program topic for today is signing on to signature projects, risks, results, and rewards. A special thanks to Pili's Development Communications Manager, or Director, Karen Albrandt. She is our naming person at Pili. We would not be able to pull off all of these programs without her because she has named every single one of them. And a special thanks also to Dan Schwarzlos, who you've all seen taking pictures. He will be trying to catch some candidates of you today, but also was there to welcome you at the door. And of course, Pili's Executive Director, who I've caught just taking a sip of water, Susan Curry, back there at table 9. I'd now like to introduce our panel. We have today Larry Wojcik, a partner with DLA Piper, Earl Stone, partner with Sonnenschein Nath and Rosenthal, and a former president of Pili's Board of Directors, Alan O'Connor with the American Bar Association Center on Pro Bono, and Aaron McCloskey-Moss, a partner at Baker McKenzie and also a current member of Pili's Board of Directors. With that, I'm going to turn it over for each of the panelists, starting with Larry, to do a brief self-introduction.
Thank you, Michael. It's a pleasure to be here this afternoon with you. I sit on our local Chicago Pro Bono Committee, and I led our team on the Juvenile Justice Project that we just completed, but we're still on the legislative implementation part of it. The program was done in conjunction with Judge Houston of the juvenile courts, and for a little over 3 years, our attorneys expended roughly 23,000 hours in representing children in the courts. An offshoot of that program was the development of a policy piece that we issued in February this year. It focused on one of the issues we found parents, guardians, and our children or our clients had difficulty, and that was returning with any chance of success from detention back to the classroom, especially in Cook County and especially in Chicago Public Schools. So after studying that project and studying similar programs around the country, we issued a report with some very easy to implement short-term recommendations and two very long-term recommendations that will definitely take some buy-in by the community. We're happy to say that on the short-term recommendations, at least the probation office has really embraced them. And those recommendations involve making the probation officer, in some respects, help be an advocate for the child, pointing out what programs are available to the child, what alternative educational settings are available, and the like. On the legislative agenda, we're focusing on the expungement process, which we found to be an oxymoron in terms of the electronic age. Each juvenile's record is transmitted to the state police, and then transmitted electronically to the FBI, Homeland Security, Department of Justice, Immigration, what have you. And so when the child eventually does get the record expunged, based on my experience in the civil trial arena, you just can't use the delete key. It just will not erase it. States like Oregon have actually put teeth in their expungement. They're focusing on the big box employers who try and skirt the law to get agents to get around the expungement and look at records. So they basically armed the children in that state with the private right of action against an employer who improperly accesses an expunged record. So we're looking to try and do something similar in Illinois. But that's sort of a brief overview of our project.
I'm Earl Stone, and I am nominally a corporate lawyer. I say nominally because the fact of the matter is that for the last 5 years, I have devoted almost all of my time to the charter school that our firm organized, which is now in its 4th year of operation. The school, which is called Legacy Charter School, is located in North Lawndale. It will ultimately be pre-K to 8th grade, and is currently pre-K to 5th grade with 304 children who we actually she initially said, okay, that's really more suitable to a middle school. And then she returned one day before we started from a teachers meeting, and she said the teachers all voted to call the children scholars. And it is true that the children sort of visibly swelled with pride on being called a scholar, and it really was absolutely the right decision. Anyways, we started investigating the idea of a charter school in the summer of 2003. And I was asked to look into the possibility of doing that. We made a recommendation to our Policy and Planning Committee. At the end of that year, the committee endorsed the idea, and then we set off on about 9 months of planning to write the application that you have to have for a charter school, and file that in October of 2004. It was accepted the following, early the following year, and then we opened in July of that year. And I never expected this to be anything like the full-time job that it became. It is an enormously time-intensive job to start a school, and particularly if you do it as we did, which is building it from scratch. It's very different if you drop into an existing school and provide support to it, but here you have to, it's starting a business, among other things, and a very complicated and highly regulated business. Lawyers have, and business people have a very large amount to contribute to a effort like that, and I think my involvement and our firm's very extensive involvement, both lawyers and non-professionals in multiple aspects of the school, has made it a far better school, and has been deeply satisfying to me. So I will tell you more as we progress. So.
I'm Alan O'Connor, and I'm a little bit of the odd person out. I'm not with the firm. I'm with the American Bar Association Center for Pro Bono, and specifically I direct the Business Law Pro Bono Project, which is a fairly unique project. It's been funded entirely by the American Bar Association's section of business law, and it's housed in the Center for Pro Bono. And the purpose of the project is to do whatever needs to be done to encourage and help support transactional pro bono work or the pro bono work of business owners, however that may occur. I'm on this panel today because I'm in a pretty unique position to be communicating with law firms all around the country and of every size and nature about the work that they're doing, the pro bono work, specifically the transactional pro bono work. So without spending much time talking about that now, I know that's going to come up in the Q&A session when Mike starts grilling us, so I'll leave most of my information for that point.
Good afternoon. I'm Erin Moss. I am a litigation partner at Baker McKenzie. I'm also very pleased to be here. I'm our co-chair of the Pro Bono Committee in the Chicago office of Baker McKenzie, and have held that position for about 8 years. And my approach and my perspective today, what I'm going to share with you today, is slightly different from what you've already heard, which is I'm going to talk a little bit more about why you might not do a signature program, or why your firm may choose to define signature projects slightly differently than what you've heard earlier, which are truly putting a significant amount of resources, both professional and probably monetary resources as well at one particular project. Our firm and our pro bono program has essentially developed from the public interest agency partnerships that we have had over a span of now many years. And our program has really grown organically from that perspective. And a number of times we have asked ourselves whether what has grown organically has essentially turned into a signature project, and whether we could do more, whether we could have a greater impact by potentially putting some boundaries around the work that we do, the pro bono work that we do, and perhaps combining that with the goals that we have with respect to our corporate giving and our charitable donations and charitable giving as well. And through that, we have essentially rejected a signature project model for a variety of reasons, the model essentially that you've heard here today. But from that, I think what we have realized is that we have a lot of signature projects going on. They're just not called signature projects. And because of that, we've really tried to look at our program from sort of the 30,000-foot level and how the Chicago office fits in with all of our other offices around the country and ultimately around the globe. Baker McKenzie is a global law firm, and we have global pro bono efforts that have been going on for a long time. And so the concept of signature project, particularly on a global level, became very interesting to us and to the direction of our pro bono program. And one of the things that has developed is what I would call a signature project or program on the global level, which is to we work with one primary organization out of Washington, D.C., the Public International Law and Policy Group, on issues surrounding peacekeeping and post-conflict resolution measures, and how the law can essentially assist countries that are coming out of conflict develop rules, develop ways in which they can govern themselves, police themselves in a peaceful manner. And that's really where our sort of signature project seems to have developed. But at a local level, what I think we have concluded really is that our public interest partners are where our sort of signature project lies.
Thanks, Erin, and thanks again to all of our panelists for joining us today. The representatives from each of the panelists have agreed in advance to the format of today's discussion and have promised to stick to our format. But we will have an opportunity after some questions from me and from some discussion for each of you to pose some questions before we go to the roundtable portion of today's discussion. So first, let's start with, I guess, the fundamental question for any of you who want to chime in on this. What exactly is a signature project? And we've heard some examples, and then we've heard some possibilities that there are things out there like signature projects, not called them. What do each of you think on that respect?
Let me start out, because I've thought about that, and I think there's no common definition, except I think the one our firm really applies. It's a project where we want to devote significant resources, and we want significant buy-in at all levels. On the Juvenile Justice Project, it was not just the lawyers, it was the researchers in our library, paralegals, it was secretaries, it was a broad level of involvement. And we also want to do it in a way that our young lawyers who are always concerned about the amount of their billable hours won't suffer. So, for example, on our signature project on juvenile justice, our lawyers got unlimited credit, if you will, as if it was billable hours, including the payment of bonuses. And as we discussed today, I can tell you that, in any system you're going to have some outliers, but we found that was an effective way to involve as many lawyers as possible across the board, and really provide the representation that's required representing a child in the juvenile courts. So for us, We started, I think, with a major project in DC involving the adoption of children. We have projects going on in several other cities right now. But it's a recognition and buy-in by the management of the firm that this is a large commitment. And lawyers were going to have to treat this as any other client. And the trick is to try and do it, a major project, without diminishing the other work your lawyers are already doing. We have lawyers already volunteering and doing work in a wide range of areas. And so the trick, and I think that's what helped with the billable hour credit, okay, was not to minimize basically the contribution our lawyers were making already in other projects. But for us, a signature is just putting emphasis on it.
I would agree basically with all that you've said. I don't think there's any magic in calling something a signature project or not a signature project, but the key idea is that it is a major project that really attracts interest throughout the firm. It is hopefully something that is relatively unique, the idea of being signature being that this is something special that your firm is doing. And to accomplish that, you clearly have to have buy-in across the firm, and not just, as you said, from senior management, but also from people at all levels, which is something that we have with Legacy. We have as many non-lawyers involved with the school and assisting in their various areas of specialization that makes a huge difference. For example, our IS department basically runs the IS system at Legacy. Our finance people do the payroll and the budgeting, and we have 30 plus people who tutor weekly. So you need to have a very broad engagement. The other aspect that I think is important on a major project, signature or otherwise, is that hopefully it's something that really uses the type of resources that your firm has. And so in the case of Legacy, it makes an enormous difference that we can bring to bear all the different type of operational support that a large law firm has. In other types of projects, it's important that you have multiple offices and so on. So hopefully you do something that is relatively unique to the type of firm that you are.
I do agree with my panelists that a signature project typically involves a firm-wide commitment. Its characteristics are usually that it's some sort of targeted effort, and it involves either a single client or a single substantive area of the law. Almost necessarily, there's collaboration with another organization. And to reiterate, it is firm-wide. It will cross-practice areas, participation will cross-practice areas and experience levels, and extend into the non-owner employee of the law firm.
I would agree that, at least from our perspective, signature projects are, there's a sort of common theme, there's a focus. You're either working directly with one agency, for example, or source of work. You may be working on a legislative project, but the bottom line is you're pooling your resources. You are placing emphasis on a particular either project or type of law or maybe even series of small projects, and that you are, as much as you can, bringing your firm's resources to bear. And if you have multi-offices, for the most part, I see signature projects as bringing the resources of all of your offices to bear on that particular project.
My next question is specifically for Errol and Larry on what exactly led to your respective firms' decision to adopt a signature project?
We were about to celebrate our 100th anniversary as a law firm, and we wanted to have a centerpiece of that celebration, a major service project. We did not want it to be a major party. So we looked around for what to do. One of our partners had heard about charter schools. This is back 5 years ago. I had barely heard of them, and I didn't really even know what they were. In any case, he recommended that we look into starting a charter school in connection with our anniversary. And that's what we decided to do, and we decided more broadly to make education an overall theme of the anniversary celebration. But by far and away, the biggest piece of that was the charter school. And we felt when we looked into it that there was really nothing in a broad social sense that was important for us to add whatever we could to then enhancing education in dramatically underserved communities in the inner city of Chicago and in other cities.
Right, for us, our signature projects are usually driven by a committee that explores ideas, that is comprised primarily of senior and mid-level associates, with the guidance of 1 or 2 senior partners on the committee, because it's very important to have that type of buy-in into the project by those folks we're going to ask to devote time to it. That's how we focused on doing something in the juvenile justice area. The next step was finding the right partner. I think that is something that's been alluded to. In this case, we went to Northwestern, the Bloom Clinic, Tom Garrity. We actually, I'm in a litigation group, and as you might expect, the DLA Piper, juvenile justice background is rather slim. And it was important that we import the talent that our young lawyers needed to be able to do the job. So we partnered with Bloom and actually took on Carolyn Frazier, who's a clinical professor there now. And she became basically our resident. We basically paid the law school to have her on our staff to help train our lawyers and to be there to consult on cases. And Tom Garrity gave immensely of his time. We also went to the University of Chicago and partnered with their social worker program, so that we had one of their graduate students assigned to each team in the representation of an individual. So getting the key partners for us was really important. And then certainly we went to Judge Easton and asked, is this something certainly he'd be interested in? And he was incredibly supportive. But again, the starting point was asking our young men and women, okay, what would you like to work on? And juvenile justice is the topic that rose.
Aaron, this one's just for you. Can you describe a little bit further about how your firm concluded not to focus on a signature pro bono project per se, but also spend a moment talking about some of the other quasi-signature projects that aren't signature projects that your firm is doing.
I'd be happy to. Every year we have a leadership workshop, I think is what we now call it, of all the pro bono leaders in our offices around the country. And it's held in a different Baker McKenzie office every January. And the focus of that meeting of the pro bono leaders who are partners and associates in their respective offices. These are people like me who are, both lawyers and they serve as committee chairs. The goal of that meeting is to talk about how we can further develop our pro bono program, our regional pro bono program, not just the individual office pro bono programs, but how can the firm and its management, its goals and policies and all of those things be shaped or changed to advance our pro bono program. And much like Larry has just described, we've had very interesting and heated and exciting conversations about what we can do as a firm. Where should our pro bono efforts go? And we've talked about in each one of those meetings whether we can harness our sort of regional efforts, the individual efforts of our lawyers in respective regional offices on a signature project. And the one thing that became very clear to us was that everyone valued very much the work that they can do within their own communities. And the concern was that if we picked what I'm defining as a signature project, which would be a regional project, that might dilute the efforts that are proceeding in our individual offices. And that was a very large concern for people. It was hard for us to identify one area of law, for example, or one particular topic that was common amongst all of the lawyers in our offices around the region. We are in Miami and in California, and here the legal issues that our lawyers were dealing with in those offices on a pro bono basis were very different. And as a result of that, we essentially rejected the idea of trying to convince the firm that there was one particular project that was more important than others. But that then leads me to what I think are our sort of quasi-signature projects that I not very eloquently tried to explain earlier. It has become clear that there are themes that have developed within our pro bono programs in their individual offices, within their own communities. And for example, special education. We have in all of our offices special education projects that are going on that have essentially developed into what I would call sort of a signature project, a small project where all of the lawyers in our offices that are working on pro bono special education issues, whether those are appellate issues or whether people are, lawyers are representing children in due process hearings or whatever the case may be, we've sort of developed connections between each other. We have regional calls where we talk about the special education work that we're doing, the topics that we're addressing, where our appellate work is being done, for example. And that led to us filing an amicus brief on behalf of 13 public interest agencies before the United States Supreme Court in a special education case. That really came as a result of us sort of brainstorming about how we individually, as pro bono lawyers, for example, doing special education work, how we as a firm could harness all of that, the work and the experience and just the professional resources that we could bring to bear, and how we could make change, really, where we could best use our resources. So what I'm trying to explain really is that from sort of the organic development of our firm, of our pro bono projects within our firm, you can start to see some signature project themes that are developing. That leads to the PILPG work that I was explaining earlier, which is really a global project. And we have lawyers throughout the globe in our offices elsewhere that are working on the PILPG work as well. They have individual projects that may be very different from what other people are working on. But it is something that, again, developed organically and has now sort of risen to the level of a signature project. We just don't necessarily call it that.
Alan, this one is for you. If you could talk a little bit from your national perspective of what you've seen as reasons, some of which we've just heard, as to why firms or organizations might adopt, and some might choose not to adopt signature projects.
I concur with everything the panelists have described so far, and you know, at the top of the list of reasons for determining to adopt a signature project is the good you can do. The fact that you can fill some sort of an unmet legal need in your community, a legal need that can be met by legal services organizations due to a lack of resources or funding restrictions. But in addition, it's often an opportunity to leverage existing resources and leverage existing relationships, and build additional and new relationships. Working with your clients and working with the other members of your legal community, it certainly improves your standing as a firm in that community. Also, it's an opportunity to either share or develop expertise in a certain area. So those are all very good reasons for undertaking a signature project. On the other hand, I have seen occasions where things probably haven't worked quite as well for certain firms working on certain projects. Sometimes a firm adopting a signature project may create an impression in their legal community that is all they do in the way of pro bono work, to the exclusion of some of the bread and butter work that legal services may need their assistance with. Also, if it's a signature project that maybe hasn't been planned quite as well, they may in fact be diverting resources away from the other work that can be done in their attempt to meet a legal need that doesn't even exist. So there are occasions when through poor planning perhaps, or through a lack of the best possible relationship in the area with the legal community, doing a signature project isn't the best possible idea.
My next question is for Errol and Larry, and Aaron, chime as well from your experience with some of the other projects you're doing. How do these respective signature projects fit into your firm's overall pro bono program? We've heard a little on that from you, Aaron, but from each of your perspectives at your firm, how are they fitting into your overall pro bono community service efforts?
Let me try and fit that in. Well, we do have projects that are collaborative among offices. We have a Career Global project where we try and make it a global project with firms' offices around the world. Our projects domestically have really been by office, and we try and fit the right project with the right size office. Our Chicago office is still the largest office here in the United States. It could afford, if you will, a project of the breadth of the juvenile justice project. In smaller offices, we try to say, okay, can our firm partner with other firms, with other partners on a significant project? But it's usually driven, again, by the lawyers in the office. And I think Aaron said something very important. At the end of the day, can you make a difference? I'm sorry, maybe that was Alan who said that. Whether or not, at the end of the day, it's really worthwhile. And just to dovetail for a bit, there can be a dark side to the signature project. You have to be careful of, I call them before the outliers. Okay, as I pointed out, for example, we gave unlimited billable credit. Well, we had a couple of young lawyers who decided they really loved doing juvenile justice cases. And we had to, I hate to use this word, but basically police it. The enthusiasm was great. But at the end of the day, we needed the development. Okay, they had to develop in ways that they could succeed at the law firm. We also had what I call great casualties, people we would love to keep who decided based on this project that, gosh, I don't want to work for DL. I corporations. I want to do something for the good of the people. They're still our friends. We still do projects with them. We're sorry to lose them. But that was a little bit of the dark side, as I explained to my other partners, why, one of my stars in litigation was now set on righting the world. But, I mean, all in all, sometimes our projects picked us. Katrina is a great example. Our challenge, in the juvenile justice project, for example, most of the load hit my department, the litigation department. Okay. It was hard getting any transactional lawyers really interested in going to juvenile court, nor should they. But that said, in Katrina, we found just a wonderful way to use our transactional lawyers because countless documents were destroyed in the floods, where folks could not prove claims against insurance companies because they couldn't prove they had title to the house. And so, on a regular basis, our lawyers, and this is an example from several offices, our real estate lawyers from several offices, okay, trek down there, do interviews, take information, then come back up and work on getting title for these folks. So there's an example where the need found us.
I would, first of all, emphasize that the Legacy project is really unique within our firm, and first we can tell unique within law firms generally. So it's really not the general model that we follow, and depending exactly on how you define a signature project, we may not have any other ones. And I've been chairman of our firm-wide pro bono committee for about 7 years as well. And the way our process works there is really very much what Aaron described. Matters come out of our individual offices and mainly arise because a given lawyer wants to take on something, and those may develop into very major pieces of litigation or commercial matters. They may develop to involve multiple offices, or multiple offices may sort of simultaneously but independently work in similar areas. We've done a lot of immigration work that really wasn't very coordinated to begin with. So I think that there's no one size fits all, and the key thing is that you need to have a enthusiastic champion for any project that you do, and that really means that it probably has to start at the level of the lawyer who really wants to champion it.
I guess I would just add that, as I was describing a little bit before, the sort of signature projects that have developed because people are interested in that particular type of work have really become signature projects, as I'm defining them, primarily because we talked about it amongst each other. Within our firm, we talked about what is it that we are doing, what is it that we're interested in, and from that we were able to define some fairly specific areas of law and projects, really, that we could then essentially harness all of that, all of those resources, both personal resources and then firm resources, and take on bigger and bigger projects, take on litigation, for example, that would require cross-office, multidisciplinary efforts, lots of also firm resources added to that. So it's really organic from our perspective, and I think from that we've really developed some strong projects. And I would agree that you have to have champions. You really have to have people that take the leadership of those projects and run with them. And we actually have, with these conference calls, we have people that are essentially practice group leaders of that particular pro bono subject, that area of law. It's not a pro bono subject, it's an area of law, but primarily, pro bono efforts are going towards that area of law. So without that leadership, we wouldn't take it any further, I don't think. It really requires that leadership, and then going to firm management and asking for the resources, as you would with any practice group, to really develop and expand the project as much as you can.
And Alan, on to you again, going back to your national perspective. What trends have you seen across the nation in the area of signature projects, and in particular, what trends have you seen, if there have been any, with regard to smaller or mid-sized firms, and whether or not they're doing pro bono signature projects?
My top 10 list of top 10 trends that I've seen include many that are represented here on this panel. Probably the top trend I've seen is the expanding geographic nature of signature projects. It may start with one office of a law firm or with a small law firm, but it grows into a multi-office project or even takes on a global scale. I've also seen an expanding role of the volunteer law firm. Traditionally, you see a law firm handling just discrete matters or individual pieces of litigation. Law firms are now moving much more into a general counsel role for an organization or taking on an advisory or consultative role. And DLA Piper's projects are very good examples of these. I'm also seeing a growing participation by practice areas not ordinarily involved in pro bono. Depending on the nature of your signature project, you may see your intellectual property lawyers become involved, or your tax lawyers become involved. There's a unique project in Arizona where there's a media hotline, and lawyers are handling First Amendment and Freedom of Information Act questions from reporters and people doing research. I'm also seeing another trend, which is the enhanced partnering relationships. First and foremost, on most of these projects, there's some sort of partnership relationship with legal services organizations, but we're also seeing that expand into other community-based organizations, law schools taking a far more active role, either through their pro bono program or through their clinics, corporate law departments, non-legal entities. There's a project in New York, the New York Signature Pro Bono Project. Some of your firms may be involved in, and PricewaterhouseCoopers is a partner in that project. Bar associations. In North Carolina, the Bar Association itself undertook a signature project in which the business lawyers have become involved, providing advice to entrepreneurs and member enterprise owners. I'm also seeing projects that involve something like the Legacy Project, where it's a little bit of a more holistic treatment for the client. You're not just meeting their legal needs, but you're meeting other needs as well. Another very important development I am seeing is the leveraging of urban resources to meet rural needs. We're seeing a lot of that going on in the state of Texas now. ExxonMobil Corporation's law department is involved with the Houston Volunteer Lawyers Program, and they are partnering with some legal aid agencies further out west in the state to meet the legal needs of community-based organizations. I'm also seeing some interesting work going on in the area, the direct and indirect support of organizations involved in social entrepreneurship or sustainability. That's becoming a big issue for a lot of law firms. It's an area that's of great interest in younger lawyers and most firms. And an example of that would be York Harrington's commitment to microfinance, the work they're doing in that area, or Kay Scholer's work with Echoing Green, which is one of these, it's an organization that supports social entrepreneurs. We're seeing a lot of work in the housing area and also the greenhousing. There's a very interesting project Kilpatrick Stockton worked on. Began as a post-Katrina project, trying to work with an organization that would help develop modular affordable housing, and it's sort of transformed itself into an affordable green housing project. I think the last trend I've seen, the last important trend is the work law firms are doing in response to disasters. I'm finding increasingly that it's not a one-time only situation, that many law firms have responded to certain disasters in the past, and then when a new disaster occurs, they pick up the model, dust it off, and rework it for a new situation. And a good example of that is Stricken Levan in New York. Helped establish a 9/11 Small Business Court Assistance Project to help small business owners following 9/11. And when Katrina came through, they remodeled the project and took it down to New Orleans and helped small business owners down there. So that's becoming an area of expertise. So those are some of the top trends.
And let's stick with you again for just a moment, Alan. Many of our firms that we work with are looking for transactional opportunities. Almost all of our corporations are looking for them and sometimes struggling to do so. What things are you seeing on the transactional pro bono front?
I'm seeing a lot of work with nonprofit organizations, and we have someone in the audience, Susan. Where are you, Susan Kaplan? Here you are. Susan does a lot of work with nonprofit organizations and small business owners trying to help place their legal matters with volunteer law firms. There's a lot going on there. Also with microfinance. There's a lot going on with holistic community development. I'm seeing law firms that adopt a blighted community and just work as much as they can with all of the organizations in the community to help things along. And I'm starting to see some very interesting bankruptcy work, oddly enough.
This is a question for everyone, because I think each of you in your own way have touched on it. What opportunities with regard to signature pro bono projects or your pro bono efforts generally do you see for partnering, whether it be, we've talked a lot about the need to partner with agencies, but also with other law firms or corporations or law schools in delivering your pro bono efforts?
Well, apart from partnering with the agencies and law schools, we found just a great way to run a program is to partner with our clients. Ellen's right, Operation Head Start involves one of our clients, Parks Waterhouse, who helps the compliance work. So helps our lawyers for the Head Start program make sure that they're in compliance. It's a wonderful way. In Chicago, we work with Accenture just on reading to children, reading nights to children. It's a wonderful way for people who work together in the law on a daily basis to get together outside the law. Transwestern, we co-sponsor with clients. With Transwestern, we co-sponsor with City Year, some of their programs. And again, we found it's just a wonderful way to interact with your client, strengthen relationships with the client, and at the same time, involve more people in the effort.
I would say that Ellen really covered the territory on partnering possibilities, but the overarching theme, I think, is that you want to be building ongoing relationships the same way you do with paying clients. You want to build them with pro bono clients, or if it's a client relationship or some type of intermediary relationship, you want it to be ongoing.
I can just add one thing to the types of partnerships that I mentioned. I have seen one wonderful program in Boston involving Goodman Proctor, where they actually partner with the solo practitioners from the neighborhoods where they're trying to address legal needs. Because the solo practitioners often have language and skills and cultural insight into working with the clients that the lawyers at the law firm don't have.
We have a long tradition of partnering with our clients on a variety of topics in a variety of ways. We have a naturalization clinic that we've had now for almost 9 years, where we have partnered with clients to provide essentially naturalization assistance for those individuals that are seeking naturalization, filling out forms, providing the right documentation so that they can become naturalized citizens. But I think the important thing to to remember really is that in whatever project you are considering partnering with public interest agencies and with corporations, that you know, the theme and the project itself is well defined, and we've had enormous success with the naturalization projects because it is a well-defined project. And we have recently been working on a United Nations project on microfinancing, and I was talking about microfinancing before. It is a very, very important topic. It's a very important issue that affects a huge number of people around the world. And one of the things we've really been struggling with, but have achieved some success with, is really trying to define how we can actually do that work. It is enormous. There are a variety of issues that really are encompassed by the idea of microfinancing. And so we've worked really hard with our clients and internally to bring the right resources to bear so that we can actually achieve successes with the microfinancing projects that we've taken on. And again, we've had some success with that. We've had some, we faltered along the way, but it's all part of this sort of organic growing process that I was describing earlier. And I think microfinancing, as just one example, is really a wave of the future because it is such an enormous issue that affects all communities, quite frankly.
And we're going to wrap up my questions with two final that I'm going to open up to everyone on the panel. The first is, for each of you, if you had one single piece of advice to give to an organization, whether it be a legal aid organization, a corporation, a law school, or a firm, considering or exploring the possibility of a signature pro bono project, what would that be? I'll pick on someone if somebody doesn't go first.
I'll be glad to start. It's got to be commitment from the top of the organization to the bottom.
I would just add a commitment by the individual who's going to lead.
I would say do a very thorough legal needs assessment before you start.
I would add, I guess what I just sort of ended with before, which is really defining what the project is. I think that fits in with the legal needs assessment and it fits in with leadership as well. But by defining what the project is, you will more successfully get the buy-in you need for management. You'll be able to develop some metrics about success. You'll be able to identify what your partners can bring to the project and what you obviously can bring to the project as well. It just allows the project to, I think, run more successfully if it's well defined.
And my final question veers off point, at least from signature pro bono projects a bit, but I think is probably one that is on everyone's mind, regardless of their perspective. And that shows our being timely and current event-wise. What impact, if any, do you see the current economic downturn having on your pro bono and community service efforts?
You have to tell us where it's going to end first. then we can answer that easily. I think that the answer is that there's going to be a enormously increased need for pro bono services. Clearly, I think fundraising is going to be difficult for the coming period of time, which I'm afraid is going to be longer than shorter. I think government funding is going to be difficult because a lot of money is being diverted to try to deal with this, and a lot of governmental entities are not in very good financial shape themselves. So there's going to be a lot of people and agencies in need of assistance. So lots of opportunities.
From our perspective, I'm not sure that anything's going to change. I think you asked what about our pro bono community service efforts would change. I'm not sure that it's going to change in the sense that we're not going to do it or we're not going to give funding. I think what it may do is it may require us as pro bono leaders within our firm to be accountable, to identify those projects and to identify the agencies with whom we work and to whom we give money, to really make sure that we that we're fulfilling our end of the deal, that our lawyers are providing pro bono legal services and all of those types of things. It's just an accountability issue. But I don't think it's going to change anything. We're certainly not going to stop doing pro bono work because I totally agree that the need is going to increase. I do think it may actually propel us more towards this concept of signature projects because we will be looking for ways that we can get more sort of bang for our buck. But I do think that we need to be concerned about not trending towards signature projects to the exclusion of doing the work, the individual cases that we do within our communities. So we're going to be keeping an eye on that as well.
Well, I wasn't with John McCain during the Great Depression. But, so I share Errol's concern about how long, how hard, and what an incredible demand it's going to make on a lot of organizations. But I must say that I've practiced long enough that we've been through a couple of recessions, and one of the most beautiful, resilient things about the legal profession and the lawyers I've known is that I never saw their willingness to contribute drop off because the Dow Jones went down. I've been with organizations where lawyers who were laid off when they were looking for a job decided, hey, I'm going to pitch in and do something. One of the first things our management said, because we have a real estate department that is looking at concealing those things, since not a lot of deals are getting done, is that there's no excuse for not using the time and putting it towards the pro bono projects. If we can't provide enough for you, you're a valuable resource, we think we're going to come out of this, we're going to need you. But in the meantime, devote that time and get you doing good. So I do share Errol's concerns about the fact that demand is going to go incredibly up because of it.
I concur with all of the panelists that demand is going to go up, but interestingly, I think you'll find within your firm the new availability of certain lawyers who will meet that demand in the real estate group, perhaps, but also in the M&A group to some extent, the finance group.
Please don't go on.
I think there may be some very interesting and unique opportunities for those lawyers with a transactional business background who are interested in doing work. We have a stock of unoccupied and soon to be even more affordable housing out there that I'm sure will be converted to nonprofit groups. That's a great way to solve some problems. I've seen some very interesting work going on in the area of bankruptcy that involves no conflict whatsoever, and it involves helping mothers receive the child support that's due to them. So I do think there are going to be a lot of opportunities for transactional lawyers.
And that's all the that's all questions from me. So now, if any members of the audience have any questions, we can entertain those. Not all at once. Marcy.
I have a question for Erin. You had mentioned that your firm started a naturalization clinic. Can you tell us a little bit more about whether you're working with a legal agency or how you're doing intake to initially get the clients into the clinic?
Yes, I'm sorry. We work with the NIJC. They provide the clients and screen the clients and bring the clients that when they come to us, they're at a certain point in the naturalization process. And so the Public Interest Agency, NIJC's role is to essentially provide us with those clients. And then we obviously represent the clients and our clients that come and partner with us provide us with assistance, but then we see the naturalization process all the way through. So they become Baker McKenzie clients, pro bono as the individuals that come to us.
Is that something that happens during the ordinary workday where different attorneys represent various clients referred by NIJC, or is actual clinic in a separate housing? Is it sort of day rotating along those lines?
The clinic is usually on a Saturday where we, the NIJC clients come to Baker McKenzie and they meet with Baker McKenzie lawyers and our clients, whomever we are partnering with. They come, we do all of the work, the preliminary work in terms of filling out the paperwork and that type of thing. We do it right then and there. And then, as most projects, there's follow-up that needs to be done, filings and other things that need to be accomplished. And Baker McKenzie's role in the project is to see all of that through. So it's an excellent way to get clients, obviously your own clients, into your offices and that type of thing. But it's just turned out to be a very successful model because everybody is excited about the particular role that they're playing. And having it on a Saturday allows for greater flexibility. Obviously, for the NIJC clients, they don't have to take a day off from work and that type of thing. So that's why we have done that particular model.
One last question on that. Do you go through your actual conflict experience initially or at the time of the clinic? Do you have NIJC send them to you ahead of time so that you can run the names?
I'm sorry, say that again, the conflict check?
Yeah, do you run it first before the attorney's meeting on Saturday?
Yes, we do. The question was whether we run a conflict check before clients come to us when they're referred by NIJC, and yes, we do.
Similar to Marcy's question, I'm curious to know how important, if at all, are intermediary organizations, like Lawyers for the Creative Arts or Community Development Law Project, or any of them, to identify these projects and to bring clients in? I know with Sun and Shine, I mean, it was you brought the project, but typically that isn't what happens. So I'm just...
I couldn't hear everything that you...
I think if I've got it right, Susan, that your question is, are firms or corporations looking for the agencies to bring to them signature project possibilities or these partnering possibilities?
Back to the how do you find clients?
Well, I would say that we're not necessarily looking to agencies to bring that, but we start out looking just to be working on an interesting project that engages us, as we have done with you, but that could very well grow into a signature project, and we would certainly be open to thinking about that. And we certainly are interested in what we talked about as an underlying concept, more on the partnering side than on the signature project side of the ongoing relationship. May or may not, again, grow into a signature project, but does provide ongoing, interesting work.
Other questions? Any final thoughts from our panelists before we move on to the roundtable discussions? Well, with that, I thank our panelists for sharing their experiences today and for We're now going to move to a slightly abbreviated version of the roundtable discussion. As I mentioned, there are facilitators for the discussion at each table. I've asked our panelists to join us for this portion. I encourage you to have a free and open discussion. There's no right or wrong things to talk about. We have provided the facilitators with a couple questions to get things started. Though if your table has things that they would like to discuss that aren't on there, that is okay. I'm giving up my control needs on that.